Welcome to Guest of the Year. I'm the host. My name's Mike. This week's guest setlist curator is owner of DeLuis Guitars, luthier Greg DeLuis. Greg makes handcrafted acoustic and electric guitars and specializes in Jerry-style guitars. He has worked on custom guitars for Melvin Seals, the Garcia family, Zach Nugent, and many others. Links to Greg's Instagram and his websites are in the show notes. Welcome, Greg. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much. Pleasure.
This week's prize pack provider is Shelburne Farms. Shelburne Farms is a Vermont-based education nonprofit on a mission to inspire and cultivate learning for a sustainable future. Their work seeks to create the space to spark conversations and share the stories to inspire educators, students, and learners of all ages to build a better future for everyone. They practice regenerative agriculture to craft farm products and meals, and the winner of this will be getting some cheeses from Shelburne Farms. Thank you so much to Shelburne Farms. Everyone can check out their link in the show notes. And thanks to Tom for connecting us. Here's how the game works. We'll play the first part of a Grateful Dead live track, and each contestant will use the messaging system to silently guess which year their performance is from. Contestants who are all on a video conference together can message in their guesses at any time during the clip or in the 10 seconds after it concludes. Whoever is furthest in the correct year is eliminated. The last two deadheads standing will hear 3 tracks, and whoever is furthest off from the correct years in aggregate wins. We've got our returning champion Steve here with us, and we'll meet the rest of the deadheads in a moment. 4-time returning champion Steve here with us, and we'll meet the rest of the deadheads in a moment. But first, without further ado, the Grateful Dead. The guesses are in. It was Slipknot at Boston Garden on September 25th, 1991. Greg, I always love it when curators choose a Slipknot. Talk to us about that one.
This was just a particularly rip and rosy set, and that's why I chose it. And it's a Northeast set. You know, it's I'm from the Northeast, and they rip hard in those like fall winter sets.
So do you have a particular affinity for Rosebud, or all of Jerry's guitars created equal in your eyes?
I mean, all of his guitars are amazing, and each one like moved the ball forward in its own way. But I'm a Doug Irwin guy, so I really love starting with Wolf and on through. So, but yeah, Rosebud is it's the penultimate Jerry guitar, I guess, but it's really the ultimate wizard stick, I think. I mean, aside from Tiger, obviously, but it was a nice send off.
It was a great pick, and Steve is the only one who nailed 91.
Was it Vince that gave it away?
It was the 2 keyboards and the kind of the not the drum tone, but the drum feel. 91, the drum sound to me is I think I understand what Dan Healy was going for in terms of dynamics. But in particular, like the snare drum sound to me is weak, is the best way I can put it. I'm a rock and roll guy, so I like a little bit harder hitting drum sound.
Steve, the 4-time champ, is 51 from Lincoln, Nebraska, and he's on to the next round. Kevin guessed 92 and Vinnie guessed 90. So they're both 1 year off, and they both move on to the next round because Brian guessed 89. Let's meet Vinnie. Vinnie is 24 from San Rafael. Vinnie, you guessed 90. Why 90?
So when I first heard it, first thing that came to my mind was Boston Gardens 1991. I could hear, I knew exactly because I know the album cover. I believe it's a Dick's Picks. It's green. And I thought that. And then I was like, maybe it's not. I was thinking more about Vince. And then I was going back and forth and trying to be like, okay, if it's, I know it's not 92. It could be right in the beginning of 90 when Vince joined and I heard the keyboards and I was like, all right, I'm just going to shoot for 90. Yeah.
Right on, Vinnie, you're on the next round. Joining you is Kevin. Kevin guessed 92. Kevin is 59 from North Attleboro, Massachusetts. Kevin, way to go. Why 92?
Well, I mean, I knew it was Vinnie. So, but that point only takes me from, it could be anywhere from 1990 to 95. So I'm trying to narrow it down. I did hear the second keyboard, so that narrowed it down to the Bruce years. So that was why I chose 92.
And hometown show there.
Yeah, that was at it.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Well, I hate when you guys, you're at the show and you don't get it on guess the year, but it happens.
It's a good problem to have. Okay, yeah, Brian is 53 from Milwaukee. He guessed 89. Brian, talks to us about the 89 guess.
Yeah, it was just a mental breakdown. I should have gone with my first guess, which was 91. And then I just started immediately focusing on Jerry, and I couldn't get off of Jerry. And I was like, yeah, I hear those keyboards. I'm like, that's just Brent like doing two keyboards going crazy. And then I'm like, that sounds like Vince. And I'm like, no, it's got to be. It can't be, And I was just focused on Jerry's sound, not, ignoring what my other part of my brain was telling me.
That's pretty reasonable. Brian, how'd you get into the Dead?
My brother got me into the Dead at like 15, and somehow I convinced my parents to let me go to a show in 1987 before I turned 17 in Chicago at the IUC Pavilion. That was the beginning of the end. Saw Last Fairly Well, saw the last Dead and Company down in Chicago tour, saw Jerry's last shows, saw Brent's last shows.
That must have been incredibly difficult, not only just losing Brent, but having been at his last show.
Oh my God. It was just tragedy. I was planning on going to those September. I mean, I saw the last Soldier Field shows. I was planning on seeing more shows in fall. Obviously, I took a little break and then came back with Vince. I didn't go. I didn't run away from college to go do that.
So you were not a big Vince guy?
I was a big Vince guy in that he continued to help them perpetuate. That's huge. Another 5 years is great.
Brian, appreciate your being on Guest of the Year.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, and good luck, everybody, and happy holidays.
Steve, Kevin, and Vinnie are on to the next round, and Greg has another awesome pick. Let's hear it.
Ain't a place a man can hide, Shannon, will keep him from the sun. Ain't a bed can give us rest, you keep us on the run.
It was Jack Straw. at Veterans Memorial Coliseum in New Haven, Connecticut on May 10th, 1978. Greg, why that one?
I don't know. It's good old 70s straw on Wolf with the dual sounds. This is, with Wolf when it comes back. And he just rips on the thing. And yeah, that's why I chose. Also, I was born 4/20/78, which is, 20 days prior. And they were running around the Northeast at the time. And I think of myself as a stupid little baby just getting some radio waves in my brain. So then later in life, when I heard it, it seemed familiar or something.
That's awesome. Steve and Vinnie both guessed 77, and they're both on the final because Kevin guessed 84. We'll go to Vinnie. 1 year south of 78, Vinnie, but you're on to the final. Nice work. Why 77?
I always try to think of like the 77 years as being like super tight. I was going between 77 and 78, and I just kind of landed on 77 because just hoping for dear life that was it. But 78, not too bad, so I'll take it.
Sweet, Vinnie. Nice work. Steve, you're on to the finals to defend your title, going for the 5-peat. What made you guess 77?
It was Keith. Keith was doing these little runs, kind of scale runs that I distinctly remember or associate with the Winterland run in December 77, the New Year's run. So that's what led me that way.
Do you have a soft spot for the New Year's Eve 78 show?
I think it's overrated.
Whoa.
I think the event itself is probably unparalleled. I mean, the Blues Brothers and the Blues Brothers movie and The Dead and New Riders of the Purple Sage and Bill Graham feeding everybody breakfasts as they're filing out of the place. I mean, forget about it. Amazing. The show itself, they're pretty high. It's a little unfocused. And not in the great way, Huh. But I mean, I'm sure nobody there was saying, I don't know, that could have been a little tighter. I mean, if you look at just the opening whatever sequence, like Sugar Magnolia, Scarlet, Jerry he's just a useless grin. Like he's just standing there grinning, which is great,
Right on. Kevin, 84, talk to us.
I didn't hear any Donna. I didn't catch Keith. So I said, it's got to be the Brent era. And I didn't hear that tingy early 80s, 81, 82 type of keyboard. So, and I knew it wasn't late 80s because Jerry's voice, you just knew it wasn't late 80s. So if I didn't, if I heard Keith, obviously I wouldn't be in the situation, but I didn't hear Keith. So I just assumed it was early 80s. I was thinking maybe even 83. I was going to 83 or 84, but yeah, just got tripped up on that. And so it goes.
I know what you mean about avoiding that early 80s Brent keyboard. Steve taught me that trick. Now that I use it all the time, it's just like, if you don't hear the plinky keys, then it's not early 80s. You have to go later.
Yeah.
Kevin, how did you get into the Dead?
Well, I got into the Dead twice. I went like 81 to 85. I didn't go to any shows, 86, 87, 88. Then 89 to 95. I saw like another 125. But yeah, 81 was just like, you can almost forget that. I was like last minute. We got drunk and it was like whatever. But 82, the summer of 82, I turned 18 in August. And these two hippies moved up from North Carolina to the Boston suburb I was living in. Kyle and Laura, hello if you're out there. But anyways, they started talking about, they were wearing tie-dyes and playing Grateful Dead constantly. And we started hanging out for a couple of months. And they said, Grateful Dead's playing Boston Garden on a Saturday night in September, 82. I said, great, well, let's go. It'll be fun. Then like a week before the show, they go, they're playing Portland, Maine the night before. I said, wait a minute, we're going to go to the same band 2 nights in a row? I don't, So I went, and then like the first set, maybe the third song, Candyman, and I was like right in front of Jerry. I was tripping my brains out, and it just washed over me. It was like a spiritual experience. And I was hooked. And so we went to the next night in Boston, and then I'm like, hell of it, I'm going to New York. I hitchhiked down to Manhattan to Madison Square Garden on Monday. Paul and Laura came down on Tuesday. And then there was only 2 more shows, New Haven, which was like on Thursday night. So we did that. And then Syracuse on Saturday. So I had no intention of doing a tour. And I did 6 shows in like 7 or 8 days. And then I was hooked. And in 83, I went to like every show. And yeah, and then I'm a wharf rat. So I ran into a lot of problems with alcohol and drugs. And I got sober in 1986. So been sober now for 37 plus years. So I stayed away from shows for 3 years. I was like, it's a dangerous place, can't go there. And then I had a kid I met who wanted me to take him to watch over him. Summer of 89, Foxborough, first show, first set playing in the band. And I was like, wow, I can have fun doing the sober. I found the wharf rat meetings and all that. And yeah, so the rest was history. Did 125 shows and had a great time. And, so, and just the final thing I'll say is that I got married in 95, and it's funny because the day Jerry died, August 9th, I was doing my blood test, and it's like, it was the end of one era and the beginning of another. And then I lost my wife to breast cancer in 2013, Diane, and on her gravestone, I have inscribed, fare thee well, I love you more than words can tell. And that's my story.
Wow, what a tribute. Wow.
Hey, man, I'm 23 years sober myself, so that's awesome. I've seen more shows sober than I ever did using, so.
Yeah, way better.
I'd like to know more about that. So then you started going to shows sober, and Steve too. So what was that experience like?
Well, first it was very scary because as we all know, there's a shitload of booze and drugs in the parking lot. I mean, once I started getting into touring sober, I didn't go to there was a 7:30 show. I didn't show up till 7. There was nothing in the parking lot for me all afternoon. The hell was Shakedown Street, and everybody doses, shrooms, and all that. I'm like, I'm good. So it was good because when I was touring, when I was active, all I ever saw was the parking lot in the Coliseum. And then sober, I'd be like in DC, taking in museums and enjoying the culture and the restaurants and all that. So I got to see where I was traveling, you know what I mean, compared to when I was like in 83, I was living on a tour bus, you know what I mean? And just like, it was just like I didn't see anything, even though I went to like almost every show in 83. It was a horror show in some way. It was the best of times, worst of times. But yeah, the wharf rats and that type of stuff it's solid. I mean, there might be 100, 150 people sometimes in a meeting. Now, I know out of 70,000 people, that's not much. But when you get 100, 150 people together in a circle at the break, there's some power there and there's some strength,
So the wharf rat meetings occur during set break?
Yeah, it occurs set break, and they'd be like, it depends on the size of the show, but the big, Buffalo, the big 70,000 seat, whatever, like I said, 150 people. I do it now with Fish. They have the same thing, the fans, and it's the same type of thing,
I saw Ween in Kansas City this summer, and they have a group called the Sunny Bunnies.
Nice.
Sober Ween freaks. It's great.
But a quick Fish story on the side. I saw Fish in 91. I thought they sucked. Fishman's doing the vacuum cleaner, and they're doing the trampolines. I'm like, no. And then in 2019, I had a buddy drag me to Providence Civic Center, and the first show, first set, first tube, I got hooked again. The next Thursday night, I'm going to my 50th Fish show. Can't figure this shit out.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So being sober at the shows, are you able to pay better attention to what's going on?
Oh yeah, I mean, because you're not, at the end of my using, like I think the last Grateful Dead show I saw high was April '85 at Providence, and I left the show at halftime. I was so high, I was having a very bad acid trip, and I thought everybody was the DEA, and they're following me around, taking my picture, and I was just like psychotic breakdown. I was like, I never did acid after that. But it's not enjoyable. You know what I mean? It's just, hallucinogenics can be fun when you use them. I don't know, earlier they were, but they weren't fun at the end. And so then when you're sober, yeah, you have nothing to fear. You're not doing anything illegal. You're not worried about anything. You're at peace. And the music, the music is phenomenal, so.
For me, it was like what Keezy talked about. Like once you've been through the door, like I don't need to keep going through the door. It's just wide open, And there's something about there's something about standing in front of the damn stage, with the Steal Your Faces and the sound system and all that, where it all just comes, like I get high as fuck just standing there waiting for Bobby to walk out.
Greg, do you have an opinion about the intersection of psychedelics and rock music?
I have my personal experience, because I think that's where it has to end. Anybody can do whatever the fuck they want. But I personally, I'm an artist and everything. I think it definitely opened my mind, and I got wild. I got wild when I was younger, and I was a Fish. Jerry died when I was 17, so I was already into it all, and I went on tour with Fish. I did a few summers.
What's going on with Trey's guitars? Where do they compare and contrast with Jerry's? I'm sure there's a lot of differences, but what's the one that's
they're like polar opposites. Jerry's really dense tropical hardwood, really high resonant frequency, and Trey's are hollow, fully hollow, very light, and the mass is swapped out for the air column within the guitar. They work differently, but they both get there. So they both do the thing. Like I said, the magic wizard stick thing. I mean, Trey got the guy, that it was the guy. It just had to be. His guitar maker is a guy named Paul Languedoc, he's core to, he was Fish's like first sound guy. He was, Fish used to rehearse it, like where he made guitars. Fish like had a rehearsal space. He's part of Fish, basically.
Greg, I have a question. Do you know why how Doug Irwin was able to get the guitars back after Jerry passed away?
It was Jerry left him the guitars.
Oh, he left them the guitars.
And before he passed,
Okay.
left him the guitar.
Okay.
I actually spoke to Doug about this.
Yeah.
And it was heavy. Like Doug told it like, he was like, Jerry was like, you know, you're going to get the guitars. And Doug was like, what the fuck am I going to do with the guitars? And Jerry's like, I don't fucking know. You're going to get the guitars and you're going to figure it out. But yeah, Doug and Jerry, that connection is still there. You know what I mean? If any of you ever get a chance to meet Doug, he loves Jerry. And he's a really great guy.
Good question, Vinny. Kevin, thanks for sharing your story. Sounds like a long, strange trip you got there.
Hell yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it. Good luck to you guys.
All right, so we got Steve and Vinny here facing off in the final 3 songs. Whoever has the lower aggregate score, least number of years off over the 3 wins. Greg has some more great tunes. All right, let's hear them.
Started winning, Cowboys got sore. One of them called him, then 2 more. Accused him of cheating. Well, I'm not, just couldn't be. I know my uncle, he's honest as me. Hey, I'm as honest as a paper man can be. One of them cowboys, he starts to go. So I shut him down, Lord. He never saw. Shot me another. I damn it won't go. Oh no! In the confusion.
All right, the guesses are in. Me and My Uncle at the Richmond Coliseum in Richmond, Virginia on November 1st, 1985. Greg, tell us about that one.
Ripping uncles in like 84, 85. Like if you go in, there's just like a bunch of them. And this was just one of them. Tiger, ripping an uncle real clean. But yeah, I thought this one was kind of tough because it was like, it's like the early 80s thing, that, but let's see what the fellas did.
So Steve was closer. He guessed 1983. Vinny guessed 1982. So Steve was 2 years off. Vinny was 3 years off. Steve, 83. Talk to us.
That recording had some weird compression on it or something. Like I was like, what the hell is happening here? And I was so that, Brent's keyboard has this weird tone in 83-ish. And then the compression on the recording made it, to my ears, made it sound like 83 Brent keyboard. And there was a couple tom hits through the verse that I thought, fuck, that could have been 85. But then Bobby, I don't know, man. I went with 83. It was a crapshoot. And so, Vinny, mad respect to your guess too, because it could have been.
I felt like that was kind of a tough one.
Yeah, Greg, did you
and
know
that was the recording? I don't know. That wasn't exactly how I might have heard, but it was a tough one anyway.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because I found a few recordings and it was either audience or that one. That was the best board I could find.
I had an audience, but it was like a Jim Quick or someone, a real good taper, and it just sounded awesome. And it was the one I heard was real ripping. I mean, that's the content is there, but
sorry about that. That's on me then. So yeah, Vinny, you took a kind of a cipher there and came out only 3 years off in 82. Great work. Why 82?
That was hard. That was interesting that it was 85, because 85, usually when it's like Jerry, I can usually tell it's a little bit more raspy, and like you can kind of hear him start to go out a little bit before he takes his hiatus the next year. I did not expect 85.
Vinny, you're real good at this. How'd you get into the Dead?
Okay, so like in the end of middle school, I was like getting really into rock music. My dad lived in LA at the time, so my mom would always like have us pick out CDs from this cabinet. And one of the CDs was Skeletons of the Closet, which was like the compilation disc from like the early 70s. I think it was like, I forget what part, it was some early 70s, and it had like Marlon Brando and Jerry Garcia on the back. And I remember being like, okay, I recognize some of those. I recognize, all the Working Man's Dead and American Beauty songs. And then from there, it just kind of started. I didn't really get into listening to the live music till maybe a couple years later. And then I remember I heard the 72 Oregon Sunshine Daydream, the quintessential 72 album, besides like Europe 72 and whatnot. And I remember being like, wow, this is Mexicali Blues sounds pretty good live. Like, what? And I remember talking to someone, like a family friend, who was like, oh, did you know that they play music a lot better live? And I was like, are you serious? As I had no idea. So then I just went ham from there. And then I just started discovering the archive. I started trying to go through as many years as I can. Since growing up in San Rafael, was right by Terrapin Crossroads, Phil Lesch's restaurant. So I started going there occasionally. And then I went to college in Sonoma. I went to Sonoma State, and then I just being in the Bay Area, there was always Dead stuff going on. So I kind of tried to keep in touch with the community and going to Dead & Co shows. And yeah, I mean, I just love the history. I mean, I collect a lot of the old 1960s and 70s Fillmore posters. So I don't know, it's definitely become an obsession. I try not to mention something like that on like a first date or something like that, just to, so people don't, get too scared away of like, okay, I've
Oh no!
all over like all my shirts. I try to like, I remember there's someone, it was a couple episodes, I think it was one of the professors talking about, he's like a Clark Kent deadhead.
Eric Lynn, yeah.
Shout out. And I remember I was just kind of thinking like, I'm not really like that, but kind of depending on how I get to know someone a little better before I kind of be like, okay, this is like an obsession of mine. So yeah, that's how I kind of got into it. And like, I mean, being in the Bay Area, you can't get away from it. Like there's no way. So, and I got hooked. And I also go sober to shows too. Like I wouldn't say I'm sober. Like I don't drink, and I'll occasionally like smoke, but I mean, I just fall in love with the music. Like I'm just there for the scene, the culture, and the good time. So, I mean, I've always lived for that. So
right on, Vinny. Really happy to have you on the show. Steve has 2 points. Vinny has 3. The idea is to be as low as possible after 3 songs. Let's play the second song. That was Feel Like a Stranger at Oakland Alameda County Coliseum on December 16th, 1992. Craig.
Well, I don't have to say much. Jerry's just fucking ripping. It's another Rosie just fucking ripping, man. But I feel like this era is like, it's modern music. Like, it's like really, it's now. Even Vince's keyboards, I don't know, like there's something about this era in particular that I feel like it's like, it could like exist right like next to Dead & Co. in era. And I don't know, it just, to me, it feels like modern music. But yeah.
What do you think of Jerry's 60s guitar tone?
I mean, I like it. I thought that he was playing Les Pauls and SGs. Like, different scale length and like different pickups, different position of pickups. But he always sounded great. I just think that my favorite guitar is Tiger. This is just like my stupid opinions, but my favorite guitar is Tiger. But like, I think my favorite clean tone, like probably ever, is Wall of Sound Wolf single coils. It's like a pedal steel. It's fucking amazing. But you know how it is, like the recordings aren't as good.
Were the guitars that Jerry played in the 60s before he had they're doing free shows in basements, were they expensive guitars?
They were professional quality guitars. They were just what was available at the time. He was playing like some sort of hollow body Gretsch things, some Les Pauls, some SGs, and then he gets the famous 55 Strat Alligator from Graham Nash, and Rick Turner and the boys turned it into Alligator. And that's like, that's early, again, moving the ball forward, but that's like, that's some high tech shit for the day. And there's some question on what was in it at the time. I mean, I wasn't there, did it have a blaster? Did it not? I know what it has. I've played Alligator personally, but, it has the brass, not these brass components. It's super, super dope.
When you're playing $1 million guitar, are there like safety precautions you take in terms of like not slipping on a banana peel and dropping it?
Me personally?
Yeah, or anyone. Do they ask anything of you when
the people that steward these guitars, like the guy who owns Alligator, I know personally, he owns other instruments that are amazing too. And I think, they're insured, but yeah, you don't take it lightly. That's for sure. And you kind of feel guilty, honestly. Personally, I feel like, what am I doing playing this fucking thing? But it did tell me, what am I going to do? I also played his Jerry's Martin, like the old and the way Martin. It's pretty special.
What song did you play on the Alligator?
Shit, man. You know what happens when you pick up Alligator? You don't know any songs anymore. Same thing with the Martin. It's just like, I'm mostly just looking at it.
Thanks, Greg. So these guys both guessed 93. Steve, why'd you guess 93?
I'm super annoyed with myself because my first initial guess was summer of 93. I was at the RFK show, and the Stranger they played the second night there was sick. Like, ooh, that sounds like that. The second I turned my guess in, which was too soon, lesson learned, I heard Mickey playing his weird conga things. And I went, shit, that's December of 92. I was at those shows. That Dick's Pig show, I was there. It's great. And the night after was great. And so that's, as soon as I heard, because that was kind of when Mickey started stepping away from the trap kit a little bit and started doing his auxiliary percussion thing. And I heard one of those and I just went, man, I jumped too quick. It was literally, I hit send and then I hit Mickey, hit the conga. I'm like, shit, that's December 92. And I'll say that we saw that run. And then I and my friend, we made a conscious decision because right after that, we went and saw Garcia at the Warfield with his band. And for the rest of that year, I was living in Lake Tahoe. I didn't go to any Grateful Dead concerts with the exception of Kyle Expo. And we saw every Garcia band show at the Warfield in 93. And they were all heaters. They were all awesome. That was the best. Was seeing Garcia in his element, comfortable, relaxed, hanging out, playing some tunes, God, that was just the best. It was a high time.
I'm jealous of that, man. And that room is a great room. And it's like, it's not huge, you know what I mean? It's like,
it's not. And it was chill too. And my first, it was right after that show we just listened to, like a couple days later. It's my first time at the Warfield, and I'll never forget. There was this dude that somehow brought this tube in that had a bowl on it, like the size of a 1-cup measuring cup, right? And the thing was like 6 feet long, and it was so funny because I saw like a guy in a red vest coming down, right? Like an usher type person. And I thought, oh boy, how's this gonna go, And the usher walks up and he sees what's happening, and he literally looks at the situation and realizes the ridiculousness of it, and he says, could you guys, I don't know, try to make that a little more low key? And everybody just kind of looked at him and he went, Yeah, I know. And he just walked off. And then it just kept going around. I like San Francisco. This is all right.
Great venue, yeah. And great city. Vinnie, the San Francisco local, also guessed 93. Why 93?
I don't know too much at 93. I definitely listen to like everything, but like I don't focus too much on 93. And kind of when I was hearing it, the first thing that popped up was just, it reminded me of like, I think it's called Autzen, whatever's at Oregon 93.
Yep.
And I really like that show because that, when it kind of sounds like Jerry's playing an acoustic guitar, but it's actually just a pedal, and that kind of, or whatever it is he's playing, like to make it sound like that.
That's the Cripe
Oh, is it
guitar.
the
Yeah,
okay.
direct situation. Yeah.
Is it electric or is it
Or the-
acoustic?
yeah.
It is electric.
electric.
Okay, yeah.
Greg, you're last to go here. How did you get into the Dead?
I'm from the Northeast, and my mom had a pretty good record collection. So like Grateful Dead, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Allman Brothers. I got Allman, Fillmore, East. Was like I that was just like music when I was a kid. So it was always there. And then, when I got older, and I had an older brother, so I remember I saw Black Crowes. First time I ever got high was Barton Hall, Black Crowes. I was like 15, 16. And my older brother got me high as shit in Barton Hall. But it was really probably him, like really getting me to go to stuff when I'm really young, which, you're impressionable, and, you see shit you probably shouldn't have. And then the next thing you're on full summer tours. With Fish, though, I never did full summers with the Dead. It's just I was young, and I didn't catch it in time.
So now you make guitars, and I know you hand make guitars. Could you explain like why it's important that you do it by hand?
Just as a dying art, I think that's enough. But I do think that people perceive the care that goes into an item, whatever it might be, and people who are intuitive can certainly perceive it. If maybe they can't articulate it, but they might perceive it, and it might inspire them. And that's something more maybe esoteric. On the other end of it, in the world we live in, production is just everywhere. Even in the small shops now, everyone has like a CNC to kind of, make up where their hands falter or to speed up the process. But it's never to make something better. And so when you're trying to do the right thing every step of the way, you're not thinking about bean counting in a production setting. It's just an entirely different process than what it would be if it was a production, setup with board of directors, etc. So when I'm choosing woods, when I'm inlaying, I do all hand inlay. It's like, again, if you're using the CNC to do the inlay, you're faking it. And it's not better. I mean, I can cut it really tight. It's not better. It's faster for production. But the end person who gets the guitar, it's not better. It's like, it's solely to speed up production. And I think that's important, especially now with like AI and all this crazy shit that's happening. Letting our guard down and saying, no, yeah, it's okay. Fuck having this human who built this skill. And in a process that's been going on for thousands of years. I mean, like people have been like talking about luthiers. I mean, that's an old French word, but we're talking about lutes. And so I think that part is important. Like I said, there's layers. There's layers why the instrument is better. The archtop instruments, the hollow body instruments, I tune them. And it's just something, having a skilled craftsperson in a production setting to tune top and back is just not something that happens. And so the instrument suffers. And, simple things like listening to the wood. It's like what in the production setting, again, you're not listening to anything. And so you're not living up to the wood's potential. You're not even thinking about it. You're not thinking about how the thing sounds really at all. You're just starting at the beginning and going to the end. And I think it can be an artistic process. And that's what I'm trying to, hold the torch, and there's guys doing it, but a lot of the guys that are still doing it with sort of the old world methodology, there's just getting on in age.
People can order guitars from you, correct?
Yeah. DeLuisGuitars.com, Instagrams, at DeLuis Guitars.
What's that process like where they say, hey, I want a guitar. Then you like meet with them and you discuss what type of guitar and.
Yeah, I have models. That's kind of the starting point, but it's like, it's a custom shop. And because I do cut everything by hand, there is a discussion that can start. But I do, like I said, I do have models that you can just kind of see what's there and go from there. But yeah, I mean, the first part's a reach out, phone call, email, and then we go from there.
Thanks again, Greg. You've had some great guitar centric picks, and we'll hear your possibly last one, unless there's a tie. Very possible, because Steve has 2 points, Vinnie has 3. Only 1 point cushion for Steve. Let's hear the third song of the finals. Estimated Profit, Paramount Northwest Theater in Seattle on September 28th, 1977. Greg, tell us about that Estimated.
It's funny. That's the show that he got Wolf back. So he had been playing the Bean, and that's the return, the triumphant return of Wolf. And I had some updates and different pickups, some alleged stuff. I'm not sure about the buffer. Things change, come and go. I'm not sure. But yeah, so that was really the significance of that show. And then I was just listening to it, and I was like, a nice little solo section. I thought that was a tough one. I don't know how these guys did, but it's like, it could go different ways, especially with the Mutron. But see how they did.
They both got 77. So
Nice.
So Steve maintains his title because he had 2 years off over 3 songs versus 3 for Vinnie. Huge hats off to both of you guys. Vinnie, you gave Steve a run for his money there. Jesus. Vinnie, we'll start with you. Why 77?
It just kind of sounded like 77. 77 is so distinct. It's just kind of hard to beat that. And it just right off the bat sounded like that. Wasn't too fast paced for 78. Wasn't like as loose as 76, and just sounded like 77, like a Fox Theater 77 or a Cornell for that matter. But I'm not going to put that show at the same level as that. But it's definitely a great. I'm going to go back and listen to this, but it just sounded like 77 to me.
Is that the defining characteristic of 76, you think, loose?
Maybe not. I don't know. I just feel like 77 is so tight that like 76 just kind of is kind of hard to compare 76 to 77. I don't know if maybe loose isn't the right term, but it just 77 just super tight. So like, yeah.
I ask because I've always tried to like figure out exactly what is 70, because I find it, I'm not even that good at this, and I can always spot a 76, and I'm not totally sure why. Steve, what do you think about 76? And nice pull, not 77.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a distinct tone shift, and I don't know exactly when it happens. between 76 and 77. But I think a lot of it has to do with Keith Olsen whipping the band into shape to record Terrapin Station. Like, he really put them through their paces and made them like work at being tight. And so I think that's where a lot of, the polish of the spring of 77 comes from. I nailed in on this one because of Keith's tone, the drums. There's a definite shift between the spring and then Mickey. They didn't play any shows in the summer because Mickey broke his collarbone. And so when they came back in the fall, the drums had a very different tone, the way they were mic'd or something. And so also Keith's not playing the grand. He's playing, on this, he's playing that electric piano thing, but it's just a very different spring and fall 77 sound very different.
Yeah. Steve, we've talked a bit about being a wharf rat tonight and going to shows sober. And I'm wondering if you'd be open to sharing a bit about your journey in that regard.
Oh, well, that's a long story, but the short version of it is that I was a crazy mixed up kid that was already knee deep in self-destructive and not super great self-destructive behaviors and not super great self-concept when I went to my first Grateful Dead concert at RFK Stadium in summer of 1990. And the very short version of the story is that I had a very profound experience at that show where I was shown that just because of the fact that I existed, that I had value as a person in the universe, and that was important, but it wasn't enough to get me sober because I had pretty significant problems in that area. And it wasn't until Garcia died in 95, I went to hell because Garcia was effectively my higher power. My relationship with the dead wasn't super healthy at that time, right? And so I just went to hell. And it was a couple years later that after things got really bad, like the party had been over, you know what I'm saying? That I knew that I needed to stop using, basically, and so I got help for that. And over the years, what has been the biggest blessing, and Kevin, maybe you can relate to this, and others too, I hope, because I know people that are sober that didn't go to shows for years because they were like afraid or whatever, and that's totally legit. Like, I'm not, like, I understand that it's a slippery environment and there's a lot of triggers, and but for me, what it was is the music changed to fit where I was at and became very supportive of what I was trying to do, which was to not be a drug-addled degenerate, and to kind of start to put my life into some positive trajectory. And the damnedest thing about it is the dead have been cheering me on this whole time. Right? And I'm like, that's what I'm most grateful for with this situation, is they showed me initially, they gave me this really intense experience that showed me, like, dude, you have value. Right? And well, that's nice, but what am I going to do with that? And so it took a little while to get miserable enough to then think, oh wait, like I have value, and that's where the band, I often picture that really nice drawing of them in 1973, that pencil drawing with their faces saying, yeah, dude, like, get the fuck out of here. Like, that's, Garcia was they were always saying, like, man, why are you here? Like the song's like, if you don't need to be here, what are you doing? I mean, we're, and so, like, it's this really beautiful relationship that I still have with Robert Hunter's lyrics, with Jerry Garcia's guitar, with Phil Lesh kicking my ass. It's like when I need, Mickey Hart said it at Jerry's wake. He's like, Garcia gave us the power. Go out and use it. Does that answer your question?
It does, Steve. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thanks, Vinnie. Great run. Greg, really, really appreciated your picks.
Well, your guitars are beautiful, man.
Thanks, brother.
Greg's guitars are beautiful, and you can check them out. DeLuis Guitars, link in the bio. That's also where you can find a link to Shelburne Farms, our prize pack provider tonight. Thank you so much to Shelburne Farms again. Thank you to Tom for connecting us. Again, Shelburne Farms is a place you can go and learn about sustainability in a really interactive way. It's super cool. I wished I lived in Vermont for a lot of reasons, but visiting this place, which looks positively bucolic on their website, is a major one of them. Shelburne Farms, thank you all for making this happen. And congrats, Steve, on being the beneficiary of the prize pack, which is some really awesome cheeses. All right, you can subscribe to Guest of the Year on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you would, give us a rating of 5 stars, hopefully, and that helps other people find the show. If you want to be a contestant on the show, sponsor the show, or make comments and ask questions, email us at info@guestoftheyear.net. Shout out to Dylan for doing all the art stuff around here, and James and Jack for helping out behind the scenes as well. Thank you so much for listening again. Thanks to the Amazing Tapers, whose recordings made this show possible. Congratulations to Steve. Wow. And to our other contestants, thanks for playing, and remember, it's all one song anyway.
And I bid you good night, good night, good night. And I bid you good night, good night, good night.